Super sexy here. Wow. Not anymore. With my Super Nintendo beat 'em up collection. I'll start off with single player beat 'em ups with Batman Returns by Konami. This took heavy inspiration from Final Fight, where it excels. The production values are through the roof in this game for the time of release. It was an early '93 release, so huge sprites, solid animation, great graphics across the board, really good backgrounds. 3 enemies on screen at a time kind of sucks, but the mechanics as far as hit detection, controls are on point. Like I said, the production values are through the roof. So for a single player beat 'em up, this to me is one of the best of the 16-bit era. Awesome job by Konami. Next up, Alien vs. Predator. True story. When I was a little kid and I had just gotten my Super Nintendo, so this would be early 1995, there's a cart-only copy of this game at the whatever video store. And I loved Alien vs. Predator in the arcade, and me and my brother, our dumbasses, thought this was going to be a port of that. We were wrong. This is a single player only beat 'em up. It's obviously not in the same league as the arcade game in any capacity. It's a completely different game, and it's quite frankly not a good beat 'em up in any sense. Pacing, graphics, music, combat's lame, not interesting environments that you fight in. It's just like it's a low tier beat 'em up. Next up, Power Rangers. This is actually a very well done game, I think. I was into Power Rangers as a kid, and yeah, for a single player beat 'em up, the graphics, music are on point. The one kind of thing that I don't love about it is it's a single plane beat 'em up, meaning you have no up and down movement. It's kind of like a side scroller in that sense. But other than that, yeah, the mechanics are solid. You start off without being morphed, and you're not quite as strong or whatever, but yeah, I mean, both the morphed versions of the Rangers and pre-morphed versions of the Rangers have cool combos. So yeah, I mean, I thought for a kid's tie-in game, this is well done. Next up, this is clearly a reproduction. Maybe one day I'll get it for real. I doubt it. Ninja Warriors to me is easily the Super Nintendo's best single-player beat 'em up. If it were 2-player, it would easily be the Super Nintendo's best beat 'em up. This game is in a whole nother class ahead of Turtles in Time. If it were 2-player, it's not. So you get the point. As a single player only, now there's a modern version that has multiplayer, but this is the cream of the crop for beat 'em ups on Super Nintendo. It's got everything: gameplay, variety, stages are visually interesting, visually stunning, music's awesome. Yeah, aside from not having multiplayer, this game is incredible. I don't consider these beat 'em ups, but whatever. X-Men Mutant Apocalypse and Marvel Superheroes, War of the Gems. They're like action platformers with beat 'em up elements. X-Men Mutant Apocalypse was legit. It's a solid game. 5 different X-Men to play as. It's got all the Snes staples. Great visuals, big sprites. Yeah, solid across the board. This was a really good release for, I think, mid-94. Marvel Superheroes, this is completely the same gameplay engine as the predecessor, Mutant Apocalypse. Now this is kind of what I would consider a cash in. It had the license, Super Nintendo or Capcom had the license, and they figured they can get an extremely late 1996 cash grab out of it. So probably not much work went into it. Wolverine returns as a playable character. All the other guys, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Hulk, and Captain America are there and new. But yeah, think of X-Men Mutant Apocalypse with less heart and soul put into the development. Still a solid game mechanically, hit detection, and yeah, still fun. It's just less effort than Mutant Apocalypse. Alright, 2-player beat 'em ups now, which is kind of a big deal for me. Pirates of the Dark Water. This is a solid beat 'em up. Good, like a lot of Super Nintendo games or beat 'em ups in general. Good visuals, good audio for the most part. So yeah, the production values are there. What I don't like is the pacing of this game is horrible. It's like an hour and 45 minutes plus to beat it, and the moveset is not there to sustain that amount of gameplay. So you have an easy game that takes forever to beat and a pretty limited moveset and only 3 enemies on screen. It's mediocre. Aside from, like I said, the production values are above mediocre. If you have a special interest in Pirates of the Dark Water, then maybe you'll like it a little bit more, or if you don't mind games that have limited movesets or that are pretty easy, then you'll like this more than me. Next up, arcade port from Technos, the Coma Tribes. This one's interesting. It's kind of got, like the Double Dragon DNA because of the developer. Yeah, mechanically it's solid. It's very, like I said, very reminiscent of Double Dragon. The one thing that kind of is lame in my opinion is the way the game works is you kind of just stay on one screen for an entire level, and then enemies, just spawn until you're finished, and then you go to a next level. You don't actually like progress through levels. I'm not a huge fan of the Technos kind of gameplay mechanics, but they're serviceable. So yeah, graphics, audio, serviceable, 2 players. Definitely worth a try. It's a solid beat 'em up. Another Technos game, Super Double Dragon, and to me, probably the best Double Dragon, which is kind of only a half compliment. So this game actually does a lot of things that I admire and does a lot of things well. I think the combat system, most post-arcade Final Fight games drew from that kind of combat system. This is trying to do its own thing, and it does it pretty well. The problem with this game is it's damn near in slow motion. It's like off-putting how slow this game moves. If you can get over how slow the game is, the visuals are there. It's not big sprites or anything. It's not like the prototypical Snes style beat 'em up. Sprites are modest size. Obviously, there's a lot of palette swaps. I mean, the main characters are palette swaps, and some of the enemies even share their sprites, which is I don't love that. But yeah, mechanics here are pretty deep. It's a solid game overall. It's just if it was faster paced, it'd be upper tier, but it's not. Next, King of Monsters 2. Yeah, Neo Geo arcade port, and the Super Nintendo version is actually an arcade port of number 2, where the Genesis version they made a one-on-one fighter. From what I've played, I'm not a huge fan of this game. It's like it's a beat 'em up in kind of like the broadest sense. It still almost amounts to a one-on-one fighter, at least when you get to the bosses. So maybe I just need to put more time into it, but I mean, like I said, most Super Nintendo games, solid visuals, soundtrack. Now the Capcom games. Capcom did a bunch. First up, Knights of the Round. This is actually a really solid port for the Super Nintendo. Yeah, so you got really solid visuals, pretty good soundtrack. What I don't love is it's pretty basic in the in fighting mechanics and moveset sense. So you have a combo. You can actually block in this game, which gives it a little depth, but basically you have a jump attack and a standard combo as your moves, which obviously is going to get repetitive pretty fast. And then you have 3 enemies max on screen. I don't know. I have a thing where I hate seeing an empty screen in a beat 'em up. And this game, you're never gonna get overwhelmed as far as enemies attacking you. So if that's not a deal breaker for you, it's absolutely solid. And as far as the mechanics go, hit detection, like I said, it's an upper tier. Beat 'em ups from production value standpoint, from a gameplay standpoint, it's just good. King of the Dragons, as I was just ragging on Knights of the Round for having a limited moveset, this game actually has an even more limited moveset than Knights of the Round, but somehow I like it more. It's weird how this world works. So this game actually has, to me, an incredible soundtrack. It sounds almost like a Genesis game. I mean, the soundtrack in this game is extremely well done. It sounds a lot like the arcade. Gameplay wise, you don't even have combos in this game. You basically just have an attack button. 5 different characters with different range. You do get some, magic that's not unique to each character. So, yes, the only downfall in this game is the lack of moveset. I mean, but it does everything else beyond well. Like, graphics are extremely good despite the small sprites. It does fill the screen. I think you can get 5 enemies on screen, which is awesome. So you do potentially can get overwhelmed, especially in single player. The backgrounds, there's tons of them. They're all good looking. Like I said, the music thumps. It's like an incredible beat 'em up. The only negative for me is the limited moveset. After 2 really good efforts from Capcom, Captain Commando. I have a special attachment to Captain Commando. This was one of the arcade games I played as a little kid. My dad worked at Pizza Hut, and this game came in and replaced the Final Fight arcade cabinet that I had fallen in love with. So this was my second love as an arcade beat 'em up. The Super Nintendo port is a pretty big disappointment. It looks like a bad Genesis game graphically. I mean, the colors are so damn dark and dull. So that's disappointing, obviously, because you're on the Super Nintendo. You kind of expectations is at least a good-looking game, especially from Capcom. So it doesn't look very good. And then playability, you take graphics that look like a kind of poor Genesis game, and then you don't back that up with good gameplay, like solid gameplay, fast gameplay, and filling the screen with characters. So you have a game that looks like a bad Genesis game and plays like a bad Super Nintendo game, and that's a terrible combination for 16-bit beat 'em ups. So nice things to say about it. It has all the characters. Their entire movesets are here. The game isn't broken. I mean, the hit detection's good enough. It's not as good as most of the Capcom beat 'em ups I've talked about or will talk about. But like I said, it's the production values went in the tank, man. The music's mediocre, graphics garbage, especially for Super Nintendo standards, and then it doesn't back it up. Only 3 enemies on screen, and these sprites aren't even that big. I mean, this, especially for a 1995 release, which was announced to go and be a Sega CD game originally, and they canceled that. Good idea by Capcom or Sega, whoever the hell would have actually produced it. But yeah, crappy port of a very good game. Following up one crappy port, we have another atrocious port. This one, there's a reason, in my eyes, a legitimate good reason why it was a shitty port. We have Final Fight. So this game came out in December 1990 in Japan, so that's, I mean, the infancy of the 16-bit era. and I think maybe one of the first Capcom games done, or the first Capcom game done. So most people already know the obvious disadvantages of this port. You have the single player only, missing a stage, missing a character guy. Those things all suck, but what do you have left? You have left with a game, like I said, single player only, 3 enemies on screen, and it slows down continuously all the time. So you're still left with a shitty playing game. Along with the slowdown, you get dropped controller inputs. So obviously when you want to do something, you press your button and your character doesn't do it, that will piss you off, especially if you get, hit because of it. So I've played through this every now and then, and I always say, good. Like, I mean, it was well received during its initial release, but it holds up as 0 out of 10. And quick personal story, I actually finally got this game when I got my Super Nintendo. It was one of the first games I bought after I got Super Nintendo and Donkey Kong in 1995. I went to a video game store, picked this game up. I was super excited. Super Nintendo is so much more powerful than Genesis because it can run Final Fight without a CD attachment, and holy shit, was I not prepared for how bad this sucked. And true story, I returned it and I said it was broken. They took the return. Obviously the game wasn't broken, but Capcom followed it up with a solid-ish effort, Final Fight 2. So Final Fight 2 is a good mediocre-ish game. I mean, it's hard to say good, but it's at least a good step up from the original Final Fight port on Super Nintendo. So you get your 2 players now, 3 characters. Obviously Cody and Guy are gone for Mackie and Carlos. I never had any attachment to Mackie and Carlos playing this game as a kid. I was actually sad that there's no Cody and Guy, because this was the game I rented when I got my Super Nintendo, and I just wanted I don't know what I was thinking, that Guy was going to be a hidden character in this game. I remember the 1-ups you get in this game are Guy dolls, so I thought he must be a hidden character, and I remember just trying my hardest to unlock Guy. Anyways, the game does a good job as far as, the mechanics are on point, production values are really good as far as graphics, sprite size, hit detection, controls. They're all on point. The backgrounds, I think, are visually interesting, and there's a variety of them, so you constantly fighting in different environments, which definitely helps any beat 'em up stay interesting. The problem where this game is it's absolutely way too easy. I mean, even as a little kid, you blow through this game on the hardest difficulty setting, just mashing the attack button. There's absolutely no strategy or critical thinking you're ever going to use in this game. Why is that? Well, we have a game, I think, in its heart was balanced to be, like an arcade style game, but with 3 enemies on screen, you're never, it just doesn't work, So you just blow through this game, even on single player, like I said, on the very hardest difficulty. Another thing that's a really big drawback to this game is Streets of Rage 2 came out 6 months before it and completely reinvented, in my eyes, beat 'em ups. Final Fight was the standard, easily the standard, until Streets of Rage 2, and Streets of Rage 2 redefined the genre with massive movesets and varied characters and all that other stuff. So Final Fight 2, the movesets are exactly the same as the original Final Fight, and the big thing that even sucks even more is, I would say, that you have a more limited moveset than Final Fight Arcade or CD, because the weapons in this game are useless and they're pretty much never pop up. So when they do pop up, you don't want to use them because you're going to spend forever. They don't do any damage and they're just pretty much useless. So you're basically just left to use one combo and a grapple the entire game. Step in the right direction for sure. Final Fight 3. This game took all my complaints about a limited moveset and fixed it. I mean, all the characters, Lucia, the girl, Dean, the guy kind of sucks. Guy is probably, to me, the one of the most perfect beat 'em up characters in any beat 'em up ever. Final Fight 3 guy has an insanely good moveset. So crisp, so nice, so varied. And then Hagar has an awesome moveset. So this game, yeah, visually, extremely well done. Some goofy art here and there, but I mean, no one's going to complain about the graphics. It was this December 95 release, 24 megs. So visually, one of the best looking beat 'em ups. They have huge movesets. As usual with most Capcom games, the hit detection controls are all on point. Where this game kind of falls apart is same as Final Fight 2. There's absolutely no difficulty level. You're never going to be thinking critically about how to beat a stage or a boss or whatever, a screen. There's only 3 enemies on screen for 99% of the game. And I mean, in single player, like I said, you're going to mash through it. If you do have a second player with you, this game goes back to suffering from chronic slowdown with 2 players. And then, like I said, if you're playing with 2 players and there's only 3 enemies on screen, I mean, one of the times you're just going to be jerking off in the corner by yourself doing nothing. So, because of the disappointing Final Fight 1 port to the Super Nintendo, Jellico saw an opening, and we got Rival Turf, which is Rushing Beat in Japan and doesn't have comically outdated box art. I'll say this is from a mechanical sense, it's not quite as tight as in the controls. The hit detection isn't quite as good. The graphics aren't quite as good. But Rival Turf, legit, I would rather play this Rival Turf than this Final Fight any day. Doesn't have near the slowdown issues. 2-player alone is a huge deal, huge bonus. And yeah, like I said, it's mechanically not broken. It's definitely not near as tight as most Capcom beat 'em ups. Graphics, oh my god, graphics are pretty good. It's a solid game, but it's definitely you know, a poor man's Final Fight clone, except the poor man was going through a depression when he got ported to the Super Nintendo. Missing its direct sequel, Brawl Brothers. I do have Peacekeepers, which is the 3rd and final game in the Rushing Beat series. This is a competent, good beat 'em up. Sprites aren't huge; they're solid size. There's only 3 enemies on screen, and the sprites aren't that big, so I don't know what the hell's going on. There's differences between the North American version and the Japanese version. Japanese version is generally better. People will say a bunch of stuff about a storyline. I don't care about the story in any game, let alone a beat 'em up. But yeah, you're missing storyline. The music, I think, is not turned on from the offset, so you have to turn on the music, and I think there's missing music. So it's a solid beat 'em up. It's an improvement over the first, and to me, improvement over Brawl Brothers. But the Rushing Beat trilogy, to me, is kind of B tier, even at its best. So definitely solid, worth playing, but not even close to an elite level beat 'em up. And finally, my last beat 'em up, to me the best beat 'em up on Super Nintendo. As I already said, Ninja Warriors would be better if it was 2-player, but Turtles in Time. What? Can't do it, whatever. Turtles in Time. As we've repeated a bunch of times, like a lot of Super Nintendo beat 'em ups, visually, this game does the job. It's an extremely good looking game. Music's on point. What I think this game does incredibly well is the production values, the presentation. The backgrounds are all visually appealing and interesting, which is important in a beat 'em up like this. So the style of this game is as good as you're gonna get, I think, from any 16-bit beat 'em up. Where it doesn't compete with the truly elite beat 'em ups of the 16-bit era, for me, Streets of Rage 2, 3, and Final Fight CD, it's a little too easy, and the combat is, you know, the moveset's pretty damn limited. It's basically like, as I said in previous games, this is the type of game where you can mash the attack button, not really use much strategy and win. The bosses, I'll say in Turtles in Time, actually do at least force you to learn their patterns, which is a big plus, especially compared to Hyperstone Heist. While we're on the topic, this game to me is better than Hyperstone Heist, and comfortably so. Not because it plays better, because it doesn't. Hyperstone Heist plays a little bit better. Not because the music's better, it's not in my eyes. Hyperstone Heist, I prefer the soundtrack. But this game destroys Hyperstone Heist as far as the visual presentation, the backgrounds. It has the move. You have a limited move set, but at least it keeps the throw at the screen move. So Hyperstone Heist losing that move is a big deal when you only have like 3 moves. If you're missing one of 3 moves, then it's a big deal. And yes, I'm using 3 moves, hyperbole. There's more than 3. Exaggerating that. So yeah, I mean, Turtles in Time to me is the best Super Nintendo beat 'em up. As in the era in general, it might be number 4. I think after Streets of Rage 2, Streets of Rage 3, and Final Fight CD, I probably put this at number 4 for the generation. Maybe, I'm not going to say Golden Axe 3 out of it. Anyways, that's my Super Nintendo beat 'em up collection.